Hey, everyone. Hey, all right, good, good. It's great to be in community with you all. My name is Darius Ballinger. I'm coming from the south side of Chicago, executive director of a mentoring organization for boys and young men of color. And so specifically when we talk about the conversation of race, I want to use an analogy that I learned early on, and it says that when Pharaoh wanted to keep the enslaved people enslaved, he made sure that they argued amongst each other, all right? And I don't know where you are with things, but I stand true that there's a good and evil in the world. I stand true in the belief that there is something else that wants us to be more divided than we already are. And I know our society has already constructed waste in a way that's far to get away from. But the more we can tear down those divisions and see the humanity of all of us, I think we'll be better off.
We're in a time right now, it doesn't need to be rehearsed, that is so polarized, so tribal, so divided, so full of hate, so full of dehumanization, right? And so the natural instinct there is, where can I find common ground? Where can I heal these divides? Where can I get people to bridge? And that's great. That's what so many of us are doing. At the same time, what we've got to remember is this. The point of American civic life, in the end, is to argue. Why? Because America is an argument. America is not a single idea that we all follow lockstep. America, down from our creedal documents, all the choices we make today in Shreveport or Akron or wherever it may be, is an argument between liberty and equality. Right? We use those two words interchangeably like they're mom and apple pie. But if you think about it for just 10 seconds, too much liberty starts to stifle someone else's equality. Too much equality starts cordoning off someone else's liberty. As Americans, we're always trying to strike that balance between liberty and equality. Those of you who are fans of Hamilton know that America is also an argument between a Hamiltonian view of strong central government, Jeffersonian view of strong local control. That's as old as the founding. America is an argument between colorblind and color-conscious views of the Constitution. America is an argument between the pluribus and the unum of our national motto. Are we meant to just celebrate our differences, or are we meant to find some reweaving? America is an argument between individual responsibility and collective responsibility. God help us if one side or another on each of these arguments ever achieves, quote, final victory. God help us, because then we will not be the United States anymore. We will be something like we're seeing in a lot of other places during this time of creeping authoritarianism around the world. The whole point of American civic life is to contest these ideas. Right? And these aren't high, vast ideas. We've got a project running out of the Aspen Institute called the Better Arguments Project, in which we're taking these ideas and applying them to the life of different communities and recognizing that the better arguments that we're having and that we need to have, well, let me put it this way, that the point of American civic life is not necessarily to have fewer arguments, it's just to have less stupid ones. Right? And when I say less stupid, I don't mean to be glib. I mean arguments that are more rooted in history and understanding these creedal tensions, but also arguments, as all we've been talking about today, are more emotionally intelligent, that recognize where pain lies, recognize the history of trauma, that recognize the buttons that each of us gets pushed when we enter into an argument. But also arguments, as has been said throughout this day, and I know yesterday afternoon, most pointedly, that are honest about power and about the inequity of power, about who gets to be heard. Who framed the terms of the argument in the first place?
Okay, so in all that you do, weaving is obviously extremely centripetal, let's see. Okay, but you have to think about systemic factors too, ways that you can strengthen systemic factors that will make your job easier. Quickly, a couple of good ideas that come from the left. Criminal justice reform, anything that improves trust in government is centripetal. It gives the system more legitimacy. It makes people more willing to buy in. Improving the fairness of elections, improving their legitimacy. Congressional reform, especially to foster friendships within Congress. We need congressional weavers. Reducing the role of money in politics. So systemic injustice and corruption are centrifugal forces. They embitter people. Anything we do to reduce those helps. But I want to caution this group in particular, this room in particular, that from everything I've heard, I just got here this morning, but from everything I've heard, and a couple of people have noticed this, there clearly is a kind of a vibe here. There's an emergent culture, and it is left of center social justice. Weavers, it seems, is a culture of left-leaning social justice activists with some variation. At least that's what I'm picking up. And I think, that's true of my world too. I'm a professor. Almost everybody's on the left. This is our vibe. And I think it makes us much less effective. As Eric said, America is an argument. And if there's only one side doing the arguing, you don't know as much. One of the most brilliant lessons I've ever heard from John Stuart Mill, he said in the 1850s, in almost every one of the leading controversies, both sides were in the right in what they affirmed, though in the wrong in what they denied. And if either could have been made to take the other's views in addition to its own, little more would have been needed to make its doctrine correct. So the left, I think, is correct to always be pushing for reforms that increase justice. That is essential. But here are a few ideas from the right that you might not have thought of. At least I didn't think of them until I began studying politics. One is the importance of marriage, family, and religion. The right has known for centuries of the importance of the little platoons of life that prepare you for broader political participation. The importance of shared rituals, such as the Pledge of Allegiance, and a generally assimilationist approach to immigration. Now, you can debate that, but you should at least recognize that the assimilationist approach worked really well in the 20th century. Certainly, Jews like my family, my grandparents came to America in 1907. My wife's family is from Korea in the 1960s, and they assimilated into an order that let them keep their identity, but we had a kind of an overarching, general, shared identity that allowed for a lot of mutual cooperation and living together. And lastly, the importance of patriotism or love of country without covering up our failings. So my point is, there are ideas on both sides, but if the Weavers becomes a social justice-leaning group, we're going to miss a lot of them.
So as human beings, as citizens, we are living a dynamic, always, of sameness and difference. In some ways, we are exactly the same. In some ways, we are very different. It's often a quick determination people make in society. I'm like him. I'm like her. I'm not like him. I'm not like them. This conversation will allow us to live that dynamic of sameness and of difference. We look different. We come from different places. We're of different ages and backgrounds. Our families live different historical realities. They came from different places. The structures and constraints that society imposes are different based on background. Some here have lived historical dynamics of oppression differently than others. We are different in religious belief and religious understanding of how it holds together, or in no religious understanding. And yet, there's so much that may be the same. There's so many commonalities. David and the Weave team have met many here all over the country and have come back again and again feeling that sense of common purpose, common identity, common values, common beliefs, common humanity. We don't have to deny our differences to celebrate our similarities. It's one and the same, this living of a dynamic of sameness and difference. We get to do that today, and we get to do that by thinking about this notion of reweaving community. How are we reweaving community as the authentic expression of ourselves? And as we do that, how are we like others in this room, and how are we different? And how can that common experience of sameness and difference energize us to build the movement of which David speaks?
So I'll just end this very last quote. Here's the quote, yeah. I intend to destroy segregation by positive and embracing methods. Paul Emery, thank you. When my brothers try to draw a circle to exclude me, I shall draw a larger circle to include them. Where they speak out for the privileges of a puny group, I shall shout for the rights of all mankind. Thank you.